So Sanjana, I think for critical success in these examinations, cracking mains is very important. And I think you've got exceptionally high scores in mains. In fact, compared to interview, your main scores have been high both the times. We don't know the main scores in APPSC, but in both the civil service examinations, your main scores are quite high. In fact, even in your year when you got 207, your main scores were comparable with those who got IAS ranks. I think just because the interview marks were not very high, you had to you got a lower rank. So interview I think is a very unpredictable process. One students we cannot rely one's fate only to interview process. So having good hold over mains gives you greater control over the final outcome. And I think your rank is a very good example of that. That you mastered mains. You did well in mains both the times, and that ensured your place in the list. And I think within mains, optional is a key element. And you have scored one of the highest marks, not just once but two times in optional. Last year, I think your marks in sociology were the second highest in the country, and this year also you got one of the highest marks. Last year was 290, and this year, if I'm not, it's about 280.
Yes, sir.
And this year, the highest reported score among the selected candidates is only 285. I think anthropology got even higher, 306, but for sociology, the marks are 20 marks less. So the highest score is only 285, and you got 280. So, how would you explain this? How would you tell our students about the importance of optional?
That's true, sir. Optional, I think, has played a key role in my strategy, in my attempt to get success here. And we have followed optional first strategy. So, by meaning optional first, we are trying to tell that optional is the first paper that you should try to master when one is preparing for mains. And terms of priority, also optional stands first. So, optional first strategy has definitely paid us rewards. Coming to my optional, that is socio, I made sure that I prepared well. And why do we go for optional first strategy is, I think, a relevant question. That's because of two reasons. Firstly, I think predictability, and secondly, its repeatability. Predictability, what do I mean here is that you can predict to a certain extent what kind of questions come in optional. That's how the papers are designed. The verbatim may change a bit, but optional questions revolve around the same topic, around the same issue, and try to ask in a similar fashion, more or less. So that's very important because in comparison to GS, where there's a lot of unpredictability about what kind of questions come, in optional one can be sure that from a thinker these set of questions come, or from a social issue these kind of questions come. So predictability offers very wide scope for people to prepare well. And coming to the second part, that's repeatability. Here, when once you do well in optional, I think you can repeat the same strategy, repeat the same answer writing format, and then end up scoring well then end up scoring well. So these are the two important parameters, predictability and repeatability, which sets apart optional and which should tell an aspirant that all his energy initially, at least 40 to 50% of the time that he is devoting to prepare for exam, should go for optional preparation.
True, I think that is, there's no other way to put it. Sanjana ma'ams, I think your success, a key pillar in your entire success. If one pillar is notes, the other pillar is optional. Because I remember the first time you went to interview in the 2019 exam, I think you owed your interview call only to your optional and GS2. You cracked just these two papers, and in every other paper, your scores were not that high. But since you cracked optional, and in 2020 exam, I think you got the very high score in optional, and you retained your GS2 marks while also pulling up GS3, whereas GS1 still remained a weak area.
Yes, sir.
And just by pulling up GS1, you ensured that you got a rank. So it's a consistent effort, and cracking optional first and ensuring that your optional gave you 270 plus score made sure that you could you had fewer things to worry about.
Yes, sir.
And I think in optional, because it's a limited domain, this is what I tell a lot of my mentorship students as well, that optional is a very limited domain. And preparing notes, preparing no topics, anticipating questions is easier.
That's
GS, on
right.
the other hand, is a wide area, the
It's
widest
extremely vast.
possible reach, whereas optional has a limited scope. So by scoring well in optional, one has a minimum guarantee first. Second, when you cover your optional well, it gives you enormous mental peace.
There's a lot of mind space that's
Mind
available
space
for
that's
GS.
available. And of course, not to forget the other theme we have been discussing, that it gives a certain amount of repeatability to your performance. So optional first, I think that is the theme, that is the slogan which we are trying to suggest to our aspirants, and that's
Definitely.
something I recommend as well.
Yes, sir.
Okay.